up, man?
What's up?
Shit, it is fucking Super 8.
You ready to quit your job?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. All right. Welcome back to the Amaretto's on Armageddon podcast. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize for the shitty video quality. However, this turns out. But yeah, I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's very hot outside. Got done doing that. Done working, and now we're gonna do a podcast because that seems to be the thing to do. Gonna apologize right away that this didn't get up right in time with today. Just been super busy with this tour. Just a lot of stuff going on, and yeah. Anywho, I guess we'll dive into it. Really starting to see some of the effects of some of this fuel stuff, like with the Strait of Hormuz stuff, seeing some of the repercussions. When I was in California, I think it was $7.50 a gallon for diesel, and then I saw places around the East Coast hitting somewhere around that. So I'll be interested to see what it is when I get back out to California, because I'll be heading out to LA the end of next week, and I will bet it's probably around 8 or 9. It's you start to see the effects of stuff. Just like my company started limiting fuel to 50 gallons, starting to cut some stuff out of the budget, just really trying to make room for that. But it gets frustrating with seeing some of this stuff start to collapse, because I want a good future, and evidently right now we're not getting handed that. It's we're getting handed kind of a pretty crappy world to go into as far as my generation, economically speaking, and I mean even freedoms wise too. But just on the economic side, it's the average income is continually increasing, and that's not necessarily good, because that means our dollars inflating. I mean, it could be a good sign if it was in correlation with the cost of living, but like it's not. It's not. All the cost of living is just going up. If anything, it's exceeding the change in pay. So it's not keeping up with it. It's not keeping up with the cost. Um, which that's what we do all this for. We work and we want to get paid and we want to invest and we want to retire. Um, and it's becoming less and less of a possibility for my generation. Um, and for some of us, we just land on a windfall and we find a good job. That's pretty much where I'm at. Is I have a good job. However, I do have to sort of slave away and give up everything and trade it in. Um, which is what generations in the past have done. But in return, they got a home, they got you know Social Security, they got all that stuff. Um, and with some of the cuts they're making up there, I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if Social Security runs out by the time it's time for our generation to retire. Um, People don't have the extra money to be able to invest, so like don't really care how the Dow is doing, the S&P 500. None of that matters if you don't have any investments. Um, so you're not getting any ROI. So I could give a rip if that's doing good, because I have nothing vested. So, um, but the trade off was that you gave up your youth for like 15, 20 years. And you worked hard, and there was an accomplishment at the end. But I think there's more and more of, and of course there's the exception of. I could admit it. I could admit that there is a good chunk of my generation that's pretty lazy, right? But I think there's a overwhelming majority that's not. Of course, the lazy ones are always the ones that end up on the internet talking about it. So that's where you get this vision. For some of the older folks out there, this is where you get this vision that this generation is so lazy. But like I've even met people 10 years younger than me, like 18, fresh adult, and they're like, "Go get her," and they're doing they're doing everything in their power to try to establish a good future for themselves. But it's not, again, the trade off's not there. So at what point do you find it worth it? Um, that's a hard one to ask. Um, you know, you don't want to do it for nothing, which is kind of what it feels like when you make X amount of dollars and then your dollars are unable to buy you these things, and there's not like this gradual increase to this lifestyle that you've envisioned for yourself. Um, and if it it's not worth it. So I think you're gonna start seeing a lot more people taking a stand to this rather than just going on the internet and talking about it like I am right now. Um, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more people take a stand to it. I know I touched on the Kimberly Clark thing a little while back, but like, uh, it truly is uh, an embodiment of the frustrations of our generation. Uh, Hoping to the guest that we'll have on next week, he'll be able to touch on more of these economic topics, um, and go into further detail than I can. I know I'm going to come up with some questions and stuff, inquisitive questions, and try to kind of get to the bottom of where some of these, where we think the economy's headed, and what do we have for hope. because I think that's a lot of what we're all looking for, is a little bit of hope to cling on to. So it should be exciting. I'm looking forward to that for next week's podcast, and hoping to get more guests, because you know we I've said it multiple times. I don't know how much of this rambling to myself I can do. It helps to have some prompts to keep the train of thought rolling, that sort of thing. Um, yeah. Um, on the what was I going to say? Speaking of just corruption and just the economy not working in our favor, and in turn, when we try to make changes, um, a lot of representatives are not listening to their constituents, which I think is a huge problem. Because if you were voted in for a certain task, you should be obligated to follow through. I don't know how I would say to go about enforcing that, but it's a huge problem. I mean, these people campaign on something, they get in, and um, they don't follow what their constituents. Um, an example of that, not following that, is out in Utah. They have that new data center. It's not sure. The show with all the billionaires on it. And people come up in their business for them to invest into. Um, what was his name? Kevin O'Leary, I believe it was. And he is buying. He's trying to build a data center out in Utah. It's going to be 40,000 acres, right? Which is a lot of space. I don't know what that equates to in square miles, but like I know what a 40-acre field is because I grew up in a farm, but or around farms. But the 40,000 acres is a lot. It's a lot. It is a huge amount, and there's so many worries with how this is going to affect their local ecosystem, specifically the water in the Great Salt Lake. Um, and there was a video I saw earlier where there was all these people that came. Like it was like almost unanimous. I mean, there's always a few stragglers. On the board. It was almost unanimous. This entire community has been trying to get them to stop from building this, and they they completely ignored it. Completely ignored it. So much as so that and I get for safety reasons, whatever, but it just seemed so cowardly was the way that they went over into another room and did it like virtual and still passed it anyways. For the construction project to build this 40,000 acre data center. And I mean, even if your constituents are wrong, I mean, it's still not your place to just completely ignore that. I it's sickening because you vote somebody in, you expect them to do what is in the interest of the constituents. And that is not even to include just campaigning. If you have an overwhelming amount of pushback on something, like you need to take that into consideration because you have to remember that you're serving the people, not the people serving you. You know, like we didn't get you the job to just get you the job. We got you the job because you're supposed to be our spokesperson and stand up for us, you know, and that's just not happening. So, and you're seeing these pop up all over the place. I think there's even going to be one being put in by me Which if I end up home, I've not really been much for participating in government, but I don't agree with putting them in. Um, there's a lot of beautiful American land that I don't want to see filled up with just consumerist garbage. Um, and it's not even like these data centers provide a whole lot. Sure, in the initial building, I think when I was watching the interview between Kevin O'Leary and Carlson, it was that he was like, "Oh, this is going to create 10,000 jobs," or whatever. But it's like those are temporary for the construction of this data center that is essentially self-sustaining, um, and you're only going to have a handful of people monitoring things and occasionally fixing them. It's not like you're creating this plethora of jobs. It takes away more jobs than it creates, right? So it's not this great thing that's going to bring jobs. Like sure, short term, 10,000 construction jobs, but beyond that, you got to think long term. It's not going to work very well. Um, and with them popping up all over the place, and how fast they're popping too, uh, it's very very concerning. Uh, Even a few people I know lose their job, like specifically office workers, but like they're in the process of replacing these office people. It's not like a conspiracy or anything. Like it's actively happening. Um, and it's been happening slowly over the years before AI, where technology's been implemented. But now that AI is here, it's just tenfold. It's super fast, um, and we're not even considering the dangers of what AI could entail. You know, like I mean, there's a multitude of things like that. There's safeguards for like once we start getting AI involved in government, that's when I'm going to be really concerned. So, because then I have a gut feeling that eventually the AI is going to determine that the humans are the problem. And of course, it was built to aid us, and it has a lack of empathy. I'm sure they probably claim that they're trying to build it in there. But, being a Christian, I believe that only belongs to God's creation, which is uh, to have empathy inside their discernment um, on what is right and wrong. And I don't think they're going to be able to build it. They can try, but it's going to uh, almost borderline sociopath because it's going to find the most efficient ways to make things work, and that might even include manipulating us. We never know. This is all. I mean, this is starting to get to speculation. It's not entirely based on what I know for sure, but I think it's going to be very scary uh, moving forward. You're just seeing cameras pop up all over the place. This surveillance state that they're building. The flock cameras are crazy. Um, what was it? I saw a clip of the CEO, CEO owner, or whatever, of Flock, and he was talking about the website DFlock, which was something that just came out recently, or maybe not recently, but but where it's been keeping track. Somebody built a website to keep pinpoints on where they're putting all these Flock cameras, um, and They're everywhere. Thousands. And they're being and they're selling contracts to government agencies to be able to have access to these flock cameras without the transparency of the public being able to access their own file that this flock system is keeping on everybody. And Flock, they use an AI software to be able to, every time you pass one, it tags where you're at. It tags like dents in the bumper, license plate. Well, obviously, license plate. They've had that around for a while, but then it uses that AI software to like track what time you were where, like patterns of like when you go to work and stuff. And it's like, how is any of this need to know information? It's it should be on a need to know basis, but I don't trust them, you know. And why is a private company involved in surveillance for law enforcement purposes? That should be handled entirely internally, uh, because these companies will they don't have any regulation on, you know, on what they can obtain. Like there's this entire crisis of our data being collected without consent. It's the digital form of search and seizure without a warrant, right? Because they're like, by tagging where you are and where you're at, it's investigating you without you ever having committed a crime. And it just builds the legwork for a very like authoritarian regime. Um, so I'm very anti that. It's it's not a world I want to live in. I don't want to be recorded, right? I don't want to be recorded. I'm choosing to be recorded right now, but um, that's my own prerogative to choose to do that. You know, and it's not the government's place to record me all the time. I don't want little Palantir drones watching my kids at the playground. I want a teacher. Because who knows who gets a hold of this information too? What if they have a data breach, and then now unconsentedly whatever hacker has access to all this information that they've been keeping on file about American citizens. On top of that, these uh, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Flock and Palantir are somewhat connected. But then they share this information with Israeli intelligence about American citizens unconsentedly, uh, which is a huge problem because that's a foreign nation. They have no business in having any information about American citizens outside of terrorism threats. And even that's a far stretch, you know. And that seems to be the whole basis on which they kind of gather their framework is like, oh, it stops like trafficking and terrorism threats, and that seems to be their fallback as their reasoning of why they should be able to do this. It's a national security issue, right? And I think it's a bunch of hogwash. I don't think they have any business doing that. It's unwarranted search and seizure of information about me. And before you say, well, if you aren't doing anything wrong, you know, you got nothing to worry about. It's like, well, when this information gets into the hands of people who determine what is right and wrong, they start changing the definitions of what is right and wrong, that's where the scary part comes into play. Because if they change their definition on it now, there's no equality between morality and legal. They're two separate topics. They're not congruent with each other. They don't run together. They're not, just because something is a law does not make it morally correct. Ideally, yes, laws should be based on morals, but I think to just see a law and assume that that's morally correct, or assume that that will always be that way, and that there couldn't be, like, these protections of they sound so stupid, but whatever amendment it is about the searches and seizures, I really should study back up on that. But that is sort of kind of how they do some of these Second Amendment loopholes too, is where they, you know, they seem to claim that this doesn't encompass this separate topic, like that data breach is outside of what was considered by the founding fathers of unwarranted search and seizure. It's all encompassing. It's all encompassing. I don't care what you invent. It needs to be included. It has to be. There are some things that I think need to be all or nothing. When we're talking about protection of rights of citizens, it has to be all or nothing. Like, it's either, and that might be pretty radical on the Second Amendment side, but that's sort of where I'm at. That's where I'm still, even though I have been obtaining some slightly more liberal ideas, especially with the economy. I it the Second Amendment's a big one. The data breach, like, I use that as a comparison because it's similar to how they started unveiling these laws that are more and more gun control law, right? And I mean, you can feel whatever way you want about that, you know, but in the aspect of the unwarranted search and seizures, I think we could probably all be on the same page. So it's a scary world. It's all happening very fast. I'm trying to keep up with this stuff. It's there's new topics every day, and I can't always recall them off the top of my head. When we get to maybe getting out of this job, um, where I can spend some more time on researching this stuff, which I would love to do because it's very fascinating, intriguing, whatever you want to call it. Is I I want to be able to spend more time on going more into like a deep dive and stuff, which I've even talked about to Thomas with this, kind of getting a little deeper because we've been very surface level since the start of this podcast, and I'd like to sort of convene on some certain topics and doing like a deep dive. Like maybe in the future you'll see something like, maybe like a 4-part series of, like, maybe we break down like all the events of 9/11 and what they told you happened and then what really happened, and kind of go down that rabbit hole. Maybe a few more rabbit holes rather than some of this surface level stuff. Um, but still to keep it very, like, try to remain unbiased in some of the reporting on it. I mean, obviously I'm going to insert my opinion, but when I'm gathering the information, I'm going to try to see both sides of things, play the devil's advocate, that sort of thing. Pick stuff up, pick stuff, pick stuff up as I go. Wow, that was hard. Sleep deprivation will do that. Which, if you work for my company, you didn't hear me. Uh, So I think we're getting probably about to the point where we'll do a quick little break just to let my brain get a little break, and then I will be right back. Thank you. All right, and we're back. Was doing a little bit of thinking on kind of where we left off. Um, and I think when you overwork yourself like this, you kind of end up with. I've been struggling with some health issues, just trying to stay sane. A lot of isolation and long hours, sleep deprivation. I mean, I think people need to be able to work less and be able to survive. Now, I'm not saying like under 40. I think 40 is a pretty after working 70, 80 hour weeks, it's pretty lucrative to work 40 hours a week. That's what I'm finding. However, to be able to work 40 hours a week and make enough to build a life for yourself, um, which is pretty hard to do at entry level. And there's always the argument of, well, if you want more money, then um, you gotta market yourself, create your own career and develop it. But I mean, at these entry level positions, I mean, we need those people. I mean, there's not enough high schoolers to fill every single entry level job, right? And if you want your McMuffin in the morning, then you're going to have these people at these entry level jobs. Otherwise, you're not going to have your McMuffin. All these little things in your life that are supported by these entry level workers. I mean, you're not going to be able to have it. So these for those people, it is essential that they are able to have just as much of an opportunity to grow. Maybe not at the same rate, maybe somebody that's taken the time to develop their career is able to advance faster and reach their life goals. So then that constitutes the harder you work, the more of a life you can build for yourself. But for the people that work the entry level jobs, like they have to have some ability to do more than break even if things are going to work in a fair society. Because if they can't survive and also build a life for themselves, what that's not a fair society, in my opinion. Um, do I promote not working? No. You live in a society, you have to contribute to some effect, right? You can't just collect from the backs of other people. That's not correct. Hence why billionaires are. Um, because effectively, even though they have built this business, I do find it overly greedy to take a $10 million salary for and take a $10 million salary, and you have workers that are struggling to meet their bills and build a life for themselves. Everybody should be included, not just the guy at the tippy top. Now that if they are able to, if those people at the bottom level are getting their fair share and are able to build their life to some extent, have a savings, have investments, then okay, then, you are the creator of the business and you are the head honcho. You can morally take that in, right? To a certain extent. As a Christian, I believe at a certain extent you should be um, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked. No ifs, ands, or buts. You are lucky enough because it really is a luck thing because you're in a competitive uh, environment and you've been graciously blessed with the fact that you were successful because your success depends on all your workers, all the clients that you make deals with. Um, that's all necessary in order for you to be at the level that you're at and being humble and realizing, right? But 9 times out of 10, in order to get to these levels, it usually incurs some moral disregard, right? Because it's a very hard path to get to that level ethically. Just for the fact that, I mean, even Jesus said it would be easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it would be for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? And I think that's very true. Um, you have to be very in tune with your morals to be at that level and then still have some ethics. Do I say that those people don't exist whatsoever? I don't think so. I think there's a select few, but there's this network, man. This network of people that are all in it for themselves and all their weird desires. You saw that with all that Epstein files. Um, so where does that bring us as far as um, how we should live our lives, right? To where do we chase success? Do we stay humble and stay where we're at? I think chasing success to a certain extent is good. I think it's a growth development, especially if you're tuning into something that you really have a passion for. Um, I think those are good qualities. Um, but you know, you have to you got to be careful, man. You got to be careful because it seems like once you start getting your wishes filled, like, which is really easy to do when you have a whole lot of money, is that you get at least, and this is not anecdotal evidence by any means. Like, I don't know what it's like to have a whole lot of money. But I mean, I've even experienced it when I've floated to this level. I found myself getting more into gambling, more into all these self sabotaging tasks or activities that really don't do you any good as far as your fulfillment. I mean, you see these people all the time that they chase when they get like these high earners that they get to this point where they're just chasing, and nothing's ever good enough for them. Which I pity them for that. Um, I've even experienced it to my extent, where I finally found the answer was putting all that success aside. Yes, it's nice, but putting success aside and finding peace rather than happiness, because happiness is fleeting, right? It ebbs and flows. You have good days, you have bad days. It's just going to happen. But when you chase peace, you're sort of cutting that sine wave in half. You're sticking right to the middle of it, which is the sweet spot. And if you can find a way there, I'm not saying nobody's perfect. They gravitated towards these things. It's part of our sinful desires. Um, but if you can at least aim your life more towards peace than happiness, I think overall the happiness will come with that. Um, and I've seen that in a few exemplars of my life, to where when I put those things aside and really focus on what matters, which for me as a Christian is my glorifying God. Um, and when you do that, in my experience, it's life is much easier. Is my faith 100% and super strong every single day? Absolutely not. Not even close. Right. So then it can be probably especially hard to switch away from that when it seems like you just keep getting, and this is on the alternative to where you fall into these desires when you're super successful, is also when you're at your lowest too, is that you're thinking, God, you're just really not working for me. You're really you're taking a baseball bat to my knees. It's and it's all about a perspective change. Um, and perspective changes can be hard because it can't just work on your good days. It's very easy to see the good things when good things are happening, right? It's on the bad days when you got to find the silver lining, because if you don't, our minds naturally gravitate towards the negative things, right? So we're gonna switch towards, if we don't keep that as our aim, we're gonna switch towards chasing, uh, or we're gonna switch towards a more negative perspective. Um, just because our mind is always trying to find flaws in things, just biologically how we're wired, is constantly trying to find flaws in things in order to correct them, and that can be a good thing in some instances. They can help you identify bad habits, that sort of thing. But it can also sort of get to the point of where all you can see is what's wrong with your life. And I'm not perfect. I am very guilty of not following that. They say practice what you preach, but that's a pretty hard standard to live by. We're all guilty of hypocrisy to some extent. I think I used an analogy with a friend of mine. Um, was trying to avoid hypocrisy is like trying to avoid using the bathroom. It's sort of like, God, I can't remember how I phrased that. Um, some Either way, let's just disregard it. Try to compare that to a little. Um, but the you can't be 100% correct 100% of the time, um, and like hold true to what you said, because in the course of your lifetime, you're going to say a million different things. Your opinions are going to change on things. You're not always going to see things the same way. So, but I think that's the humble, honest part, is being able to shift that opinion and not being so prideful that you hold on to that, because you don't want to just continue down something that's you were absolutely wrong on. As much as it makes you feel like an idiot to admit that you were wrong on something, it's much more constructive to um, it's much more constructive to not. Sorry, the sleep deprivation's catching up. It is much more constructive to admit that you were wrong and not allow that to just be a permanent dictation of what your stance is on something. I have been having so many views of mine that have totally shifted after going down quite a few rabbit holes, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It helps us grow, and it also helps us sort of stop dividing ourselves to where there's not this constant butting heads on most of the time. It's such trivial issues. Like like I could get into it, but I won't in this one. Maybe in the future. But is that there's so many issues that I can see a compromise on, but there are so many people that are hell bent on this is this is the moral this is the morally correct position to take on this. And if you don't agree with that, then you're my enemy. That's that doesn't help build anything, because you, as confident in as you are in your answer on that same person is just as confident on it. And it's not, I would say 80% of the time it is not an intelligence issue. It's not that you've figured something out that the other person hasn't. It's a perspective thing. Are there people who have their morals in the dumpster? Yes, absolutely. But I would say for the majority of people, that's not true. I think there's people with their moral compass might be facing northwest and yours is northeast. It's not like yours is facing north and theirs is south. It I would say 80% of the time that's the case. Because for the most part we all want the same things. It's just we disagree on how to get there. Like just for example, like healthcare, right? We all want healthcare for everybody. Nobody's saying, aside from the anomalies or the outliers, nobody is saying that they want people to die on the street, right? That would be a completely radical take, and there are some people out there that might say that, but we all would like health care for our parents, our grandparents, our cousins, uncles, aunts, all that. We just disagree on how to get there, which is an opinion of mine that may be shifting. I'm undecided on privatized versus government. I am currently, as it stands, seeing a lot of issues with, and I've normally been a pro private healthcare person, but I am beginning to see a lot of issues with that on an unregulated healthcare market, because there's a lot of gouging, there's a lot of price gouging. They jack the price up so that they can get more money from the insurance company. They don't really give a rip on how much that's going to cost you. And in the end, if you don't have insurance, now you're going to pay it out of pocket. And the insurance, in order to recoup that amount raises the deductibles, raises the premiums, changes their coverage on certain things, pre-existing conditions. They game it. So my point being with that is that even though I may have been so confident in the fact that like private healthcare is the way to go, I am allowing myself to start to see probably for the first time in my life, honestly. I've been very stubborn and opinionated on a lot of things, which is probably good that I started this now that I'm not so opinionated. And the benefit is that I don't have to I don't have to like party align, right? No tribalism. Like if I am willing to accept that some of my moral compass directions may be off, then this opens up conversation with so many people that maybe in the past I would have been like, I can't even talk to you because you're not even on the same page as me, right? And we have to get past that. We have to be having these conversations. We have to be talking and compromising and coming together, uniting, because we keep going down this path of being divided. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Divide and conquer has been a tactic for a long time. Long time. You've seen it in a lot of history. They divide the public, propagandize both sides. Similar to what's happening right now in America, is where like sometimes Republicans and Democrats will have the same freaking donors, you know? So they're fueling both sides. There's not like and they do it to divide, obviously. So we have to push away, right? Because it's not sustainable. We can't keep living in this society where people don't even want to talk to each other. And this is part of their tactic too, is that like they'll each side will do it. Is where they point like, I can't even reason with you. See, you can't even talk to these people, right? Like a Republican will call out a radical leftist and they'll be like, see, you can't even reason with these people. And then a Democrat will talk to like a neo-Nazi or something, and they'll be like, see, you can't even reason with these people. They're crazy. And it for the majority of people, that's not where they lie. The problem is that because those outside groups, the radicals on each side, have gotten to a point of where, if somebody leans more conservative, they're worried about having conversations with liberals because it's been painted this picture that all the liberals are like this, right? Or vice versa. You get my point. So then the silent majority is what some people call it. They feel like they got to be silent about it because they don't want controversy. And that's where I think open minds need to be. We need to just ignore the radicals on both sides. And we need to focus on the people in the middle, because this is where the reasons happen. In fact, a lot of the radicals end up being funded by CIA, stuff like that. They're made to carry out their plan. These people get approached, they get handed a wad of cash, and they're like, okay, you go get on that rooftop, go shoot at so and so, and by the way, starting this week, you're gay and trans, okay? Because this is going to get the right wing stirred up, because they're going to be like, these damn trans people, they're shooting people, and then they do the same to the other side. I can't off the top of my head think of an argument, but or a situation, but or like the neo-Nazi thing, like look at all these these Nazis marching out with their weapons out front, and it says "I hate Mexicans" and something ridiculous that no normal person would go out on the street with a sign saying something so controversial and absolutely wrong, right? No one would do that. No normal person would do that. But they don't cover that. Media doesn't cover it because it doesn't fit the agenda of divide and conquer, right? And why do they want it? They want to divide and conquer because they don't want us to recognize that really the battle is between the lower class and the upper. And they're trying to divide that apart so far that you won't be able to do anything. You won't. You won't be able to do anything. So I think we're getting as pessimistic as this is after I just got done talking about being optimistic and perspective wise. We're running out of time. I think we're really running out of time. I think we need to be having these conversations. We really need to dig into the facts. We need to accept when we're wrong, and we need to get to the bottom of all the stuff. Because if we don't, we keep getting distracted with the dog and pony shows, the concerts, the TikToks, the all sorts of things, which I'm guilty of indulging in myself. But if we keep focused on all this crap that they feed us, then we're all these things are going to happen behind the scenes, and by the time we realize, it's going to be too late. Which I would like to think that I'm wrong, but I'm starting to think that we might be already be at the point. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try to come together as a society, but I think the clock is ticking, and I think it's getting more and more less likely for us to escape this slavery they're trying to establish, because it's already essentially established. They just have to keep inflating the dollar and ruining the economy, making it less and less free market, gaming it towards high earning individuals, the landowners, and the peasants, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm actually quite surprised on how well I kept my flow. I know there was a couple points of where I kind of stuttered and couldn't get through my thought. Please be patient with me, because I've been getting an average of like 5 hours of sleep a night, right? Over the last month. It's been crazy. I'm reaching a point to where I have to be done, because I cannot sustain this any longer. It's been 6 years of being on the road, and it's been fun, and it's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed it, but I think it's time to move on and focus a little bit more on mental aspect. Take the rest of the year, pay a few things off, and then hopefully I'll be able to, at least the rest of the summer. I think I'm August, September, I'll probably be quitting. I'm definitely going to cut down on the time away from home this summer. But yeah. So that would get us pretty close to the 30-minute mark on the latter half of this. Thanks for joining. Again, sorry that this didn't get uploaded on time for my 8 a.m. Trying to stay consistent. Trying to improve in the future. And don't miss next week's, because next week we're going to have our second guest. And it should be pretty good. The guy's pretty popular. I'm not going to reveal it on here in case it's maybe not okay with him. I don't know how this stuff works. I've never had a stranger on. So, thank you all. Have a blessed day. And we will see you next week. Ciao, ciao.